What's up, music fans of the internet? I'm Derek.
And I'm Kevin.
And together we're last week's album. We're bringing you the only reviews with two different views. And this week we're talking about Big Bad Good by My Bubba. And we're asking a big question: does My Bubba deliver big, bad, good folk? Cheers, Kevin, everyone at home.
Cheers, Derek, and everyone at home.
My Bubba, though they started as a trio, are now a duo from Scandinavia. They are me, Lars' daughter, and Bubba, Thomas' daughter. And they have toured with Damien Rice, co-written music with Matthew E. White, recorded with Noah Jordson, and stepped on Bryan Adams' toes, literally, or at least so they say on their website. Big Bad Good was recorded with Shahzad Imali, who's worked with Will Oldham and Jolie Holland at his Figure Eight studio in Brooklyn. Many of the songs on this album were sung for the first time while it was being recorded to add to the raw feel of these songs. And Kevin and I actually saw them play at South by Southwest, where they delivered a fantastic, intimate performance. Without further ado, let's talk about what My Bubba sounds like. Kevin, why don't you start us off?
Sure, Derek. I think Big Bad Good sounds like Iron and Wine and Mirel Wagner playing a best of 11 round of the quiet game.
I think My Bubba sounds like Iron and Wine, Simon and Garfunkel, or a more hymnless She and Him. So let's talk about some highlights. Kevin, what'd you think?
I liked Big Bad Good. Charm and Letter. Big Bad Good has this smooth, soft groove that kicks off the album really well. Probably the most percussive track on the album, both in the beat and the layered vocals, which made it really interesting for me. They sing about how family members and musical influences have come together to make them who they are. And they don't explain the song's title until the very last verse, which makes for a nice surprise. I won't spoil it for you all at home. And then Charm has really mesmerizing vocal melodies, fluttering finger picking on guitar and lap harp. And the lyrics sing of the sort of give and take of relationships. They sing, "All I'm promising you is my charm, and that can't do you too much harm." It's a very soft, delicate, quiet song, which seems to be their sort of sweet spot. And then finally, Letter is a slow, dark dirge about a woman who has to file divorce papers from her late husband. And there's nothing but voice at first. Later, just a little bit of emotively plucked guitar. But the song is fittingly sad, but surprisingly addictive overall.
Totally agree with you on Big Bad Good. I really like the way the lyrics describe kind of their ancestors, where they came from. And I thought, what a great way to introduce themselves than these lyrics on the opening track. Another highlight for me was E.T. This song opened with some meandering harmonized vocals crooning "Phone Home, E.T., phone home." So yes, kind of like that movie from the 80s you were thinking of. And then this one kind of settled into an easy pace jam with some bass guitar, bouncy keys, and other ambient sounds that really added to the spacey vibe. With some distant vocal ooh-oohs. And lastly, I really liked Around. This one had an upbeat tempo and melody, loving, longing lyrics, nice harmonized backing vocals, strummed lap harp, acoustic and bass guitar, soft percussion, and really interesting lyric for me: "You're making wrinkles in my face. You'll give me an ulcer. You're so sweet."
Yeah, we noticed this when we saw them perform, Derek. They have this really dry sense of humor, which when you put it against these more serious sort of love songs, creates this really, really interesting sort of quirky vibe.
I think even on this album, the quirkiness and some of the sarcasm still came through. All right, so any lowlights?
Just a couple. I thought the two tracks towards the middle of the album, number 6, Sister, and number 7, I won't even try to pronounce. I thought they just felt like sort of half-baked demos rather than fully fleshed songs. Derek, you mentioned they sort of recorded these as they wrote them, and that's all well and good, but they should be longer than a minute. I'm sorry. And then towards the end, it gets a little too sleepy and slow. Instead of going out on a high note, I felt like they kind of just sort of faded out on the last 2 or 3 tracks.
Now let's talk about the overall rating and answering the big question: does My Bubba deliver big, bad, good folk? Kevin, why don't you start us off?
Sure. I will start with the question: is it big, bad, or good? At least that's how I'm interpreting the question. I think it's sort of big in its smallness And also really good. I think the quirky lyrics and really efficient minimalism are the highlights of the album. The acoustic guitar, occasional lap harp, that's kind of it, other than almost using silence as an instrument, which is pretty interesting. And then the freeform songwriting, I thought, kept what would otherwise be predictable songs sort of on their toes and keeps you listening throughout these songs. So it's sort of a delicate, breezy album, good for a lazy Sunday. And I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5.
I like your interpretation of the question overall. I hadn't even thought about it in that context, but I'll start there. Does My Bubba deliver big, bad, good folk? Yes, to all of those. What highlights to me was this folk sound. I thought the vocals were especially strong. The harmonies seemed to, the dual vocals seemed to decrease as the album went on. I thought especially kind of the later half. Yeah, I think on the whole, I agree with you in one of your lowlights earlier. The second half of the album did seem to kind of lose steam, if you will, or just not be as engaging maybe. But overall, I think, the chemistry in My Bubba, shows through in kind of two areas. Vocally, I think especially Big Bad Good illustrates that. And also instrumentally, one we didn't talk about, Go Sweat. That one really shows off the instrumental chemistry they have between the acoustic guitar and the lap harp. That being said, I'm giving this one a 3 out of 5. So with Kevin's, that's a 6 out of 10. Go check out My Bubba's Big Bad Good and let us know what you think. Thanks for joining us here again at last week's album. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube and the podcast. Cheers, guys.